Hello, Professor, fellow students. My name is Aaron, and I'm going to share a few details about my experiences with attending college during COVID. So, to begin with, I actually was currently attending a class when the pandemic broke out, like many other people were, I assume. So, I do deal with the direct and somewhat jarring switch from in person classes to remote. And it was kind of odd to start with, I suppose, like many other people also shared the same sentiments. I was not completely unprepared for it, as I was quite used to communicating over um, online camera software and just like video calling in general. I had done it before, so it wasn't entirely alien to me. I think for many people it was, and that was probably a much more jarring experience than I had myself. And also, I guess I was lucky to have been attending a class with a teacher that was more tech savvy than many other might be. So his implementation of it was very smooth, I might say. It was almost as if the class had been remote the entire time. The lesson plan did not seem to be very severely affected in any negative way. And I think the rest of the class went pretty smoothly. My grade didn't really suffer in any sort of way. And I think I handled it pretty well. I will say that leaving the classroom and not having the teacher and my other students there in person did definitely make it feel uh, definitely more lonely, but also just more. I had nobody to really reach out to like immediately and directly for any questions, like small or large, that I may have had about anything. And it felt more like I would have had to interrupt the flow of class to get personal assistance that would have normally in the classroom not really been a big deal. You just raise your hand or whisper over to this person next to you, and now it's more of like you're more separated in a sort of way, like physically and figuratively. Like it's just the whole online video call becomes more about the teacher conveying their lesson plan and making sure that the students understand it with some limited input, like the chat room and people responding over voice, of course. And most won't. A lot of people definitely won't talk, probably because they feel a lot more lax in the situation. But that definitely serves to reinforce the feeling of just being more divided and more set on this very linear path for the class, which I definitely call it a big detriment. I think a big part of the learning experience is being there with other people to both like learn and grow together as students, and for the teacher to be there to provide any sort of assistance that they can for you. And of course, it's a lot easier if they're there in person. Beyond that one class that I had mentioned and have been loosely talking about so far, going into other classes, definitely I felt myself falling off just with how much attention I was paying, how much I really cared about the class, and uh, definitely having to deal with other people's issues. As I said before, it was like the flow of the class had to be interrupted for one individual, or like myself, for instance, to receive assistance. And that was essentially what would happen in a lot of situations. Is the teacher would just be uh, conveying their lecture, their lesson plan for the day, and somebody would be much more behind than much of the rest of the class. So it was almost like a big roadblock was just suddenly dropped, and I am now sitting here waiting for this person, which I'm not really upset with the person. I guess I really am just more upset with the format that we're now in, where this person probably themselves finds it a lot more difficult to receive assistance, but they will still, go out of their way to do it because obviously they should be that should be promoted still in the situation. I think you shouldn't feel any less inclined to seek help to understand the content. But being in this format, it makes makes it a lot more difficult. And I think that's probably a sentiment that a lot of people can share, is that they feel uh, more separated from the whole uh, college and educational experience. And I think that problem in particular can be expanded to a lot of other ranges of education, uh, high school, middle school, especially younger kids that are in elementary school. It's a very big part of just growing up and going through grade school to be around your peers and your teachers and everything, and not being around them definitely removes from, I would say, just the intimate learning process where you feel much more inclined to immerse yourself like in the whole happening of a school campus, because there's so much going on. There's a lot of learning happening. There's a lot of people coming together and collaborating to figure these things out, to tackle these different issues and solve these different questions. And when you go online, it's like all that's just gone. And you really wonder, like, how much less of a quality of education you're going to receive just because of the format you're in, and not because, people just suddenly stop to feel like doing certain things because you're put into the situation. Everybody still has the same level of motivation to teach and to learn, but it's just funneled into this linear experience. And trying to get the best out of that could be very difficult for a lot of people, especially people who probably have a sort of acquired social anxiety, I would almost say, with this different format, because it's more like your voice is a lot more front and center, especially when you're seeking assistance. Like you talk and you're talking, within audible earshot of everybody else in the classroom. Whereas usually you probably just call the teacher over or like talk to the person directly next to you. And now it's like you're put on this stage in a way, and it maybe makes a lot of people shy away, and that's very unfortunate because I'm sure they wanted to learn just as much as they did when they were still going to class regularly, but now uh, they're inclined not to, and you definitely don't want that happening. So I guess that's a big question about this whole thing right now: is how do you, if at all possible, keep that experience like closer to what it normally should be? How do you retain the quality of education that you're receiving in classroom when you bring it remote? And I think that's a problem that teachers and students for the past year plus now have been trying to really figure out. And I think a lot of them have been navigating it fairly well, which is good. I think in this day and age, everybody should definitely be able to easily move over to formats like this, but staying in them for extended periods of time is difficult to adjust to. I think proper educational experience definitely demands in-person attention and just being able to immerse yourself in the things you're doing and the things you want to learn with other people. It's very important. I feel, again, that personally I was not hampered too much by this experience. I navigated it as best as I could, and my grades have seemed to uh, not suffered very much being put into this online remote format. But I definitely empathize with the people who have had a much more difficult time adjusting and trying to receive good education through these times. And essentially, that has been my experience. I have done fairly well, and I've witnessed a lot of other people who have not done as well. And it just leaves me with the question, like, how can this be done in the future uh, with better methods? And could this be done in the future in a way that would retain the same quality of education? Thank you for watching.